Making this video has been a huge challenge. I think this is my 6th try over several days. I think I have now what I need to say to get through this. This is another video in an ongoing retrospective on design work I did for a small unit combat action fire team scale simulation game, Troops in Contact. Worked on the second half of last year, 2015. Okay, I am on direct fire. Needless to say, the handling of direct fire, the importance of handling direct fire accurately was a huge motivation for the original experimentation behind Troops in Contact. There's a lot to be said here, but I'm just not getting through the video unless I stay on track. So I'm going to try to stay on track here. I'm going to go write down some core concepts and basically just say what I was trying to do. So first, fire routine. The basic construct of fire, line of fire, target of fire, percentage hit or chance of hit, combat result, beginning with hit miss. That basic construct is what I wanted to get away from when that construct does not directly apply. So if a fire team is engaging an enemy squad in a fighting position 150 meters away, first of all, most of the fire going back and forth is area fire, suppressive fire. But if one of those soldiers in the fire team readies and arms an AT-4 to fire at the enemy squad position, that then becomes a fire, line of fire, target of fire, so on and so forth. When that construct applies, I'll use it, but the overwhelming majority of fire during small unit combat actions is area fire, suppressive fire, and I want the rules to deal with that up front. I don't want area fire, suppressive fire. Well, first of all, I don't want area fire to be treated as a modified point fire. To me, that just doesn't make sense. And two, I don't want suppressive fire to be only handled as a common CRT result. Okay. I want area fire dealt with as area fire and suppressive fire. I want suppressive fire dealt with as suppressive fire. Up front, the core of direct fire is area fire, suppressive fire. Okay, range attenuation. Basically, I want, what I don't want is a variation on the standard construct. And I know I'm mixing levels here, but that's what it is. I'm mixing some platoon level design ideas with some squad level design ideas. Okay. But when it comes to range attenuation, I know what I don't want is the standard full combat power out to full range, half combat power out to twice range. Any type of simplification like that, no. What I want is real range attenuation. Real range attenuation. I have experience with this, which is what I was wasting time talking about in earlier videos. I'm not talking about it here. Since I have, let alone anybody can sit down and think about the concept of range attenuation. But anyways, beyond that, I have experience with range attenuation. I want the simulation game to handle range attenuation in a way that mirrors in a way that reflects experience. Okay, real range attenuation. All right, here's a big one. Might be one of the biggest ones. Restrictions on fire. Restrictions on fire. This is where I really wanted to try to break out of this mold. Restrictions on fire. What I'm referring to are many of the gaming standards, a hex can only be, fired on or engaged or whatever once per turn. A unit's combat factor or combat power is a unitary whole and cannot be divided. Go right down the list. The standards. Units cannot move and fire in the same turn, or a unit may move and fire, but not fire and move, or a unit may move up to half its movement allowance and fire with half of its combat power. Even that last one, I have to keep asking myself, why? I mean, why can't a unit do, in the amount of time being simulated, why can't a unit do a whole range of different things in whatever order they want to do, as long as the action to time, as long as the interaction between unit actions and time is acceptable. Anyways, all of these different types of restrictions on fire that are, and this is where I don't want to get off onto. I know why they're there. I think I know different reasons for why they're there, to support a structured phased turn construct, and to handle simultaneity. I got all that, but still try another design approach from the start. Okay. Machine gun kill zones. These are basically beaten zones. Bottom line is, at this scale and scope, 25 meter hexes, fire team units. If a rule set doesn't handle beaten zones for high rate of fire weapons like machine guns, this is a huge oversight. Beaten zones, depending on the range and the lay of the ground, can easily be 50 meters, 75 meters or more. At 25 meter hexes, this is 2 hexes, 3 hexes or more. Again, beaten zones simply have to be factored in. They have to be designed. It's not, and I'm emphasizing this because this to me is not fiddliness. This to me is not excessive detail. This is basic ballistics. This is basic firepower effects. This is basic small unit combat. So they simply have to be dealt with. And again, instead of tacking on a permutation to point fire, deal with it up front. Okay. I think the last one, because I'm looking at direct fire, action fire, initiative fire, opportunity fire, reaction fire, assault fire, snap fire. And I know some of those are similar, if not the same. Like reaction fire might be functionally equivalent to opportunity fire. It doesn't matter. What I was seeing in games I played is, in an attempt to reach for realism, higher levels of realism, rules were creating a rather astonishing array of different types of fire. And I was thinking, well, again, if you get back to the drawing board, and fire is fire, model fire as fire. Model fire is primarily, first and foremost, again, area/suppressive fire, and then deal with point fire afterwards. There might be a way to get out of all of these different types of fire, because, well, let's take opportunity fire, which is a huge, right? Huge concept of opportunity fire. In a sense, you might say the opportunity fire opportunity fire isn't different than action fire or initiative fire, or phasing player fire or phasing fire. The fire's the same. You created this category of opportunity fire for where it fits into the turn structure, and you created the concept of opportunity fire to refer to the particulars of how that fire is handled, obviously. But if you don't have a fixed turn structure, you may not need the separate category of opportunity fire in the first place. Assault fire is created because of, it seems, again, it starts with that restriction on fire. A unit may not move and fire in the same turn. Exception, assault fire. I know it's not that simplistic, but the idea is, again, creating assault fire as a separate type of fire when the fire is the same. Fire is fire. Okay. Anyways, the proliferation of different kinds of fire suggested to me that maybe back to the drawing board, look at fire again. Well, it also necessitates looking at your turn structure, but just why the need for all the different types of fire? Okay. And just those questions drove the initial experimentation behind Troops in Contact. Okay. Wow, I realized I didn't even discuss probably the biggest maybe conceptual breakthrough that I had for Troops in Contact. There were a few. One, of course, is the idea that, wow, I really can chuck I can completely chuck out the window any kind of structured turn sequence. Okay, that was one. But anyways, here to direct fire. And let me. This actually builds on what I said a bit ago. When I emphasized getting back to what fire really is, modeling, and again, it's important to me at this scale and scope, small unit combat action fire teams, 15-second action periods. It's important to me that, again, the rules handle what is central to that reality. And again, the vast majority of fire is area/suppressive fire. So when I don't know, just experimented really with turning the traditional, and this goes back to the traditional fire routine. This goes back to the traditional fire routine, which is what I was discussing in an earlier video that I scrapped, because it took me down. Well, it did take me down a rabbit hole, but it was a very fun rabbit hole. Anyways, there is a traditional fire routine, and I'm not going to talk about it now. I'll definitely talk about it in another time, but okay. Taking the traditional fire routine, which I know I haven't elaborated on here, and I'm not going to, but to take the traditional fire routine and turn it on its head, basically told me, wait a minute, I don't have to do all of the rules, procedures. I don't have to have all of the computations and modifications and etc. to determine, again, percentage hit, percentage success, whatever you want to call it, and do all of that up front. I can turn it on its ear and say, firing is firing. You open fire, you pull the trigger. It's not a big, and I know it sounds funny to say this, not a big deal. Units that want to open fire, just open fire. And the idea is that the firer on the front end, this is the design idea that I got to, and that is the firer does the bare minimum necessary on the front end to determine whatever is necessary to mark the target area with whatever's yeah, I know this is getting messed up, but mark the target area with whatever the bare minimum is to later resolve that fire, right? So the firer, the burden of work is off the firer on the front end. The burden of work is on the player owning the target area and target units. It's area in units, but the target area, the target owning player, the owning player of the target area / target units does the work to resolve that fire. And one of the reasons why, at least to date, I like this is that it meshes well with that idea of area fire, suppressive fire being the core central type of fire being modeled. Now the individual, sniper fire, individual aimed fire, those are allowed, but those are the exceptions that are handled separately. Because the usual fire, again, is area / suppressive fire. Okay. And then combat results. Okay, I'm moving on. Combat results. Yeah, I remember another video a couple days ago that I chucked because I went down a rabbit hole with combat results. So I have to find a way to clarify this. Okay, basically, if there's a way to do away with pinning and suppressing and disrupting, because again, I found a proliferation of these combat results concepts, right? Dispersed, disrupted, suppressed, pinned. Yeah, there are a few more, but again, what really matters? And it's not that I don't mind by the way, I don't mind the proliferation of the concepts. The problem is when you add at least a marker for each of those, at least, if not another table to handle that concept. That's where it gets. That's where. Well, that's just a road I don't want to go down. So, if the actual fire modeling can have pinned, suppressed, dispersed built into it, so that those things don't have to be dealt with separately and individually, that would be better. And better just means that would be more in line with the underlying design thrust or focus of troops in contact. Okay. So what was hard and fast? First of all, hard and fast is losses would have to be, to my way of thinking, losses would have to be assessed at the individual soldier level. You have a 4-man fire team, which, by the way, you can perfectly well have a 6-man, 7-man, or whatever, but just as a standard, you have your standard 4-man fire team. You take one loss. That one loss is the incapacitation of one of those soldiers. Why was this so important to me? It's really funny because if one can say that the last 20 to 30 years of modern wargame design has been a gradual abstraction of a lot of different aspects of reality in wargaming. If you can say that, I guess I just feel a strong correction. I find myself wanting to go in the opposite direction. If there is a combat loss to the target unit, I want to know what it is. I don't want an abstraction of a 25% reduction in combat power, which, by the way, it would not have to be that. But just say, for example, I just don't want abstraction there to begin with, to start with. When there's a combat loss, I want to know what the combat loss is. Okay, the other reason why individual soldier losses make sense is because, and it goes back to, well, it's actually related to what I just said, but there must be a logical, rational reduction in combatability of the unit. Now, I know that this is hardly revolutionary. We've had steps for a very, very long time. We've had off-map strength charts. We've had many different solid, frankly, design approaches to this. Well, actually, that's about, actually that is about what I was after. Okay, and losses have to be assessed at the individual soldier level. For me, okay, and all the other things like suppression and pinning and all that other stuff is, okay, I guess I can talk about it here because I'm looking at my outline and it would not be dealt with otherwise. So the two big things, the two big conceptual breakthroughs, the one I already mentioned where firing is easy. It's essentially a table lookup. That's the design idea. You want to fire at me. Again, it's not entirely this simple, but basically you're looking up in a table. You get a kind of a combat results profile, a combat results category, whatever you want to call it. You mark the target with that, which indicates what that combat results range is, and you're done. And then the die rolling, the die roll modifiers, the morale check, not the morale checks, but the checking the unit characteristics, how proficient is it, how How cohesive is it? All of that is done on the target side. It's done on my side when I go to resolve that fire. So the other conceptual breakthrough, which goes hand in hand with what I just said, is the delayed results, which, by the way, it's not delayed results, obviously. The results are results, but it's delayed reporting, which delayed reporting is only meant to be a descriptive term. It is not meant to be again, this isn't actually delayed reporting. Again, it's a cue to remind me of the design approach. But what it is simply giving players, basically not giving players real-time information. It is a form of delaying the player's understanding of what's happening. That's it. I say that's it. It's more to it than that. That goes back to the original design, underlying design approach, which I don't think I've mentioned at all through this series of videos, and that is you are playing the force as a whole. You are not playing any individual commander or leader on the ground. You're not playing the ranking person on the ground. You're not playing any individual on the ground. You are playing the force as a whole, and everything that entails. Okay, you're playing the force, and the delayed combat results is merely an attempt to give the players the frustrations that come with not having immediate real-time information and understanding. I should say, when I use the word frustrations there, I do not mean frustration in the emotional sense of the word. No, I'm not trying to give players an emotionally frustrating experience. No, what I mean by frustration is, I guess I could say complication. I want to complicate the players' understanding of the situation and ability to influence the situation. Your ability to influence the situation as the player behind the force in a small unit combat action is complicated by getting a stream of inputs that is not real time. That's exactly what I was after. Okay, put it in real simple terms. You blast away at an enemy bunker. You bring as much firepower to bear, which, by the way, is kind of what I'm going after. The simulation game rules have built in at the basic level the what's the word? The incentive to mass fire effects, because you can do all of that against a bunker. What are units on the ground seeing? They're seeing lots of smoke, explosions, bangs, blah blah blah. And now of course we already have you roll percentile dice. You roll the 1, and whoosh, the entire massed attack was a dash, was an NE, a no effect. We already have that in games. That's more the concept of a spread of possible outcomes, right? But in the traditional game, you're getting that immediately, and that's what I don't want. Yes, you could mass that attack, and yes, there could be that incredibly small chance outlier, no effect. But this is where it makes a huge difference. If you know that it was a no effect right away, it influences the very next decision you make. I want a situation where your decisions are overlapping and overlapping a lot. Whereas, so in the case that I'm thinking of, you're massing all that fire on the bunker, and your very next decision is you send the maneuver unit around to flank the bunker. In what I'm after, I want your knowledge of the effects of that massive initial attack to come after you've already committed to the maneuver unit, right? This is what I mean by the frustration or the complications of decisions and results overlapping and frankly overlapping a lot. This, by the way, builds in a little bit of decision cycle interactions, i.e., if one player is conservative, plays conservatively, and basically wants to make a decision and see the results before making the next decision, that player's decision cycle is, by their choice, slower than the player who's going to kind of play the odds and make decisions and then make follow-on decisions before knowing the results of the first decision, in the belief that he or she will kind of handle situations as they develop. Again, that player by choice, not forced on them, those players will have a faster decision cycle. It's not, I don't want to make too much out of this, but I don't want to make too much out of that. I think there's a little bit of interesting interaction going on there. Most importantly, though, it's the delayed results. And by the way, what is interesting is that these delayed results happen for both sides. Both sides. So it's not even just like has already been done in a popular design. This isn't just that the target unit is drawing a chit from a pool and looking at the chit and knowing the results of that attack, whereas the other side, the attacking player, doesn't. In what I'm talking about, both sides don't know the results of that attack. Okay. I hope I'm going to have time to deal with movement. All right, movement. Movement. Oops, hit the camera. Movement, by the way, is a significant topic for me because I'm right in the middle of revamping my ideas behind movement. Anyways, what I had last year with Troops in Contact was actually was a pretty typical squad level. 4 movement points. 1 movement point for clear terrain, 1.5 movement point for entering a building, 2.2 movement points for woods, or vice versa, 1.5 for woods, 2 point for whatever. That movement allowance, movement cost, fixed movement allowance is okay. I mean, it worked before, but something prompted me to rethink this recently. And what was it? What prompted me to rethink this? I still can't remember, but the idea was, and I'm not going to be able to go into this in detail here. I'll definitely be dealing with it in the future. But basically, what I'm getting away from is the enforced, from the design, the enforced. It is abstraction, and it is also simplification. But more importantly, it's what I think of as rounding or averaging, right? So, okay, let's talk about woods. Let's talk about a fire team. Fire team is in the open. It wants to travel through a woods hex and come out on the other end. Okay. The idea, I guess, behind movement point cost. So the unit, okay, let's say the unit moves one clear hex for one movement point. Then it enters the woods and expends 2 movement points. So total for 3. And then it enters an open hex or a clear hex on the far side of the woods hex for another movement point for a total of 4 movement points. Its normal movement allowance is 4. It's expended all of its movement. It's done for the turn. So I think the idea is, and I'm not really sure. So basically the idea is, why are you expending 2 movement points for the woods? The first thing is, well, that woods is really thick, and so literally the team, the unit, is slowed as it moves through the woods hex, meaning physically slowed. Therefore, it takes twice as long to get through that hex as it did the previous clear hex and the succeeding clear hex. Well, okay, but physically being slowed is one thing. Okay, now let's go to another explanation. Well, not all of these woods are, thick jungle. Maybe some of them are woods that you actually can pass through without constantly moving branches and so forth out of the way. Okay. Then I guess maybe the design concept is, well, on average, this is what I'm getting at. On average, a unit will slow down in order to maintain its cohesion, its formation, its situational awareness and understanding. It will slow down because it's possible the enemy is hiding in the woods. There are all of these abstractions where, again, we're averaging. We're saying a unit would tend to slow down. Why? Well, actually a whole host of reasons. And that's the kind of abstraction. That's abstraction, by the way. It would tend to slow down. Well, first of all, the tending to slow down is the averaging part. Because of XYZ is the abstraction part. And I'm trying to get away from both of those. I would like to get away from both of those. It's like, okay, well, what if the fire team wants to dash through the woods? Well, do you roll for the thickness of the woods? What do you do? What if the team, the unit, wants to dash through the woods? Why can't it? So anyways, this is, so dividing up terrain, when thinking about terrain and movement, I was thinking about terrain that is truly open. It's not an impediment. Then you have terrain that is slowing, and then you have terrain that you actually have to work to get through or over. None of these categories, by the way, do I find dealt with in a very satisfactory manner in many games. And the bottom line, again, is too much abstraction and too much averaging. Simplifying. So I was thinking, what can be done? Well, why don't we start with the idea that a unit can always cover a certain amount of ground if it just wants to move as quickly as possible. the first thing to add on to that as well, there will be things that will actually slow the unit. Okay, we'll deal with those. And there will be situations where the unit will actually have to negotiate an obstacle. Well, we'll deal with those. It's funny because I'm thinking those won't come up that often. So what is most movement? When I think about it, most movement is actually a unit choosing to cover a certain amount of ground at a certain speed, right? So why don't we deal with that as the core? The core is how fast the unit is moving. And then why don't we say that a unit basically has a set speed, and it can go full speed if it wants to. Then of course is, well, what's the cost? How do you balance that? What are the effects of that? And this is where I'm thinking right now. I'm going to add cohesion. It's not the cohesion that has been used in great battles of history. It's a different concept of cohesion, but it's still cohesion. And basically, and I'm going to wrap this up now before I run out of time. The idea is units will cover a certain speed of ground, cover a certain amount of ground by a speed. The ground that you cover reduces your cohesion, which makes things more difficult for you and has fire effects, etc., etc., etc. So that's the concept. So this allows a unit, if a unit wants to dash through woods, it can dash through woods, and the cost is it will lose its unit cohesion, obviously for a certain amount of time, and there are effects of that. So that's where I'm going with movement. All right, that's it for now.